not turn around and smiled. I took a look at the place you mentioned. Sure enough, there was an unexpected discovery. La Men Oju smiled coldly and raised the corners of her mouth. I told you, even if you found that place, you wouldn't be able to get in without the help of the La Men family. The man shrugged. I had to try, but you were right, my dear lady. He took a bottle of red wine from under the table, poured himself a glass, and then toasted La Men Oju. La Men Oju walked over to him, sat down on the sofa, crossed her legs, and suddenly didn't care that her thighs were exposed to him. Unfortunately, even though she was 36 years old and possessed supreme wealth and power, and could enjoy all the beauty and skincare products in the world, she could not fight against the passage of time. Her legs were very white, but they were thin and tight, without much luster. What did you find out? La Men Oju stared intently at the man in front of her and asked. The man took a sip of red wine, his deep eyes carrying a hint of amusement. He looked at La Men Oju and said, I find the situation in your snowy plateau very interesting. Much more interesting than I imagined. Although it will make our cooperation more difficult, it will make it more interesting, won't it? La Men Oju poured herself a glass of red wine, swirled it in front of her, and frowned. Don't rock the boat. The three families of Yashi Tai, Paji, and Xiaja, as well as the monks of Sangha Temple, are not easy to deal with. The tall man spread his hands. You're right, so you still need to strategize. But the main conflict isn't with you guys, is it? La Men Oju took a sip of red wine, her eyes cold, and she gritted her teeth. You're right. Let them fight it out first. It's easy to laugh, but the most important thing is to have the last laugh. Sangha Temple stood tall in front of the great snow mountain. From a distance, it seemed to be built on the mountainside of the Great Snow Mountain. Of course, this was only a visual illusion. In reality, Sangha Temple was still some distance away from the Great Snow Mountain. This night was destined to be restless. Temple of Light. The undertaker sat cross-legged on a straw mat. Above him was a statue of Shakyamuni Tathagata. He closed his eyes tightly and meditated. A breeze blew through the air, but it was not cold. It passed through the central hall of Sangha Temple and blew through the 3,000 prayer wheels, causing them to slowly turn. An invisible force gathered in the Temple of Light and entered the undertaker's body. At the foot of the Great Snow Mountain, he used his body as a conduit to absorb the power of the 5 epsilons and broke the first seal on the gates of the Demon Kingdom. Although he could continuously receive the blessings of the power of the Tantric faith in the snowy plateau, this power was too great for him to digest at once. At that time, in order to intimidate everyone, he had no choice but to hold on. Now he needed time to slowly repair his divine body. Outside the Temple of Light, an old monk stepped inside. He was dressed in purple robes, with only a thin layer of gray hair remaining on his head. Looking at the undertaker meditating on the cushion, the old monk, the current chief monk of Sangha Temple and head of the Yashi Tai family, Yashi Tai Deji, slowly spoke. Roland died today. He was killed by mercenaries hired by the Paji family. You always told me not to get into disputes with other families. But the divided snowy plateau will only be plagued by constant strife. Jugo, when will you agree to help me? We must completely unify the power of the Tantric faith. The undertaker slowly opened his eyes. Facing Deji, whose face was filled with sorrow and whose eyes had grief, the undertaker said slowly, everything is predestined. Roland has only entered the cycle of reincarnation. This is his fate. Deji's face turned cold. Undertaker, don't forget that you are also a member of the Yashi Tai family. Our family absolutely cannot allow others to bully us. The longer you don't take any action, the more people in the snowy region that will die. The undertaker slowly closed his eyes. Amitabha. Faced with the undertaker's response, Deji stamped his feet in anger. Fine, if you won't do anything, then I will. Faced with the stubborn undertaker, Deji was completely helpless. The undertaker was the supreme protector of the Tantric sect, and no one could force him to do anything. In the past, it might have been possible, but now, the undertaker was not only a nominal leader, but also a true protector with great supernatural powers. Unfortunately, since his enlightenment at the age of 8, he had been kept in Sangha Temple to study the Dharma. The Dharma was good, but it was not necessarily suitable for the cruel world. The Undertaker's devotion to Buddhism had led him to have a simple and kind heart, and he was therefore unwilling to be a pawn of the Yashi Langtai family. This was both a good thing and a bad thing. From another perspective, if he had truly been greedy for power, the Yashi Langtai family and Deji would be nothing. Deji stormed down the steps of the Temple of Light. Below the steps, his bodyguards were waiting respectfully. Deji glanced at the bodyguards in front of him. These men were monk soldiers from Sangha Temple, serving the gods and Buddhas. But now, they were no different from the private army of the Yashi Langtai family, obeying Deji's orders. Muchuan, come here. Deji looked at one of his bodyguards and waved him over. Muchuan hurried over. Chief monk. Deji reached out and patted him on the head, then said sternly, tomorrow, I want you to do something for me. Early the next morning, Jeangi got up and immediately went to find Pa Jigsan. He wanted to obtain information about the entire southwest region. In particular, he wanted information about the other 3 great families and the military strength of Sangha Temple. Mutants, weapons, and the size of their private armies. He had to get hold of all this information to avoid making mistakes in future operations. But before he could leave the house, Pa Jigsan came over himself. Your Excellency Chaos. Jeangi nodded. Head of the Paji family, do you need me? I was just about to come find you. Pa Jigsan sighed with a serious look on his face. Early this morning, Yashi Langtai Deji, in the name of the chief monk of Sangha Temple, requested that the 4 great families attend a meeting. Jeangi raised his eyebrows. Do you have meetings so often? Pa Jigsan's expression was a little strange as he looked at Jeangi and said, even he cannot ask us to attend a meeting without a valid reason. However, something special happened yesterday. Jeangi saw that Pa Jigsan's expression was strange, thought for a moment, and smiled inexplicably as he pointed at himself. Could it have something to do with me? Pa Jigsan nodded. Didn't you kill a patrol team yesterday? Yes, but I already told you. What, can I kill them? Jeangi smiled faintly. Pa Jigsan hurriedly said, of course you can. It's just that those people have a special status. As you must know, the monk soldiers of Sangha Temple are now no different from the private army of the Yashi Langtai family. However, on the surface, they still represent Sangha Temple, which is Tantra. You killed so many monk soldiers, including Roland, a guardian deity with a very high ability index. Deji sent them to us in his name. Pa Jigsan looked somewhat helpless. Jeangi immediately understood his situation. Nowadays, the Yashi Langtai family was equivalent to holding the emperor hostage to command the princes. How influential was the Tantric sect in the southwest region? Let's put it this way, basically everyone was a follower of Tantra. Even if the Paji family was an enemy of the Yashi Langtai family, they wouldn't dare to come out and say that they opposed Tantra. Jeangi nodded and asked, is it easy to handle? Or do you want me to take action now? Pa Jigsan waved his hand and said, it's not that serious. Right now, we're just a step away from tearing apart our relationship. In another week, it will be the day of the Dharma assembly, and he won't do anything to us. Jeangi smiled and said, that's good. You take care of the trivial matters yourself. I just came to let you know. To avoid them using this as an excuse to do something, please don't go out carelessly. Jeangi nodded and said, okay. It was broad daylight, so he couldn't just go out and investigate. Anyway, there was still a long time before the Dharma assembly, so he wasn't in a hurry. Before leaving, Pa Jigsan asked Jeangi, do you have any requests for me? I won't be here, but you can give orders to the servants here. Jeangi made his request. Pa Jigsan immediately asked the head butler Lubu to organize the information and hand it all over to Jeangi. Then he took his leave from Jeangi and hurriedly took a group of bodyguards and drove to Sangha Temple. After listening to Pa Jigsan and obtaining the information he wanted, Jeangi took it back to study with his family. the strength of the four great families was much weaker than he had imagined. After all, the Southwest Plateau region itself was sparsely populated, and the plateau was relatively poor in resources compared to other regions, so there were fewer mutants than in other regions. In addition, the four great families here were secretly fighting each other, and this internal strife made it even more difficult for them to form a powerful force. To put it bluntly, Jeangi glanced at the military strength of the four great families and saw that even combined, they were not as strong as the Jiangnan region. Without the Undertaker of Tantra as their figurehead, without the Reaper of Love, they would truly be at the bottom of the Huashu kingdom. I can easily wipe out any one of these four great families by myself. With some time and effort, I can destroy all of their families. After reading the intelligence report, Zhang felt at ease. Yang Xinxin said, in other words, the only ones we really need to deal with are the monks of Sangha Temple, especially the Lord of the Corpse. Zhang nodded, that's right, that's the truth. But now, we have to add some other hidden forces. For example, the powerful and mysterious epsilons he saw last night. But just as Zhang was studying the various forces in the southwest region, several uninvited guests appeared in the Paji family's territory. Outside the Paji family's city walls, in the raging snowstorm, 3 monks slowly walked from afar. They were dressed in robes and stepped through the snow, appearing to move very slowly, but in the blink of an eye, they were on top of the city walls. The Paji family's private soldiers subconsciously raised their guns, but when they saw the monks' clothes, they subconsciously lowered their guns. In the snowy plateau, attacking monks would result in death and being sent to the 18 levels of hell. Honorable monks, our clan chief has gone to Sangha Temple. What brings you here? A captain of the mutants walked over, his eyes fixed cautiously on the monks in front of him. But when he came closer and saw the 3 monks clearly, he was so frightened that cold sweat broke out on his back. The 3 monks did not look special. They were not tall and were even a little thin. One of them, an old man, was almost skin and bones. The leader was a middle-aged monk. He looked at the captain of the mutants and said in a gentle voice, yesterday, someone attacked the Dharma protector of Sangha Temple, and someone saw them come to your Paji family. We are here to find them. The captain of the mutants was usually very bold, but at this moment, he stammered, Our master is not here. Please wait a moment while I inform the butler. The middle-aged monk smiled slightly and said, if Tusi Paji is not here, we will look for him ourselves. As soon as he finished speaking, the captain of the mutants was about to say something when a fierce blizzard suddenly blew up around them. The soldiers were thrown about, and when they opened their eyes, the 3 monks had disappeared from where they stood. Only a fierce hurricane remained, blowing toward the huge courtyard of the Paji family. The captain of the mutants' face changed instantly, and he immediately contacted the courtyard to inform them of the situation. When the head butler, Lu Bu, heard the news, his face also became serious. This is bad. They deliberately sent the head of the family away and are coming for those distinguished guests. When Pa Jigsan left, he took with him the most powerful troops of the Paji family, especially his personal guard, Salanji. Without them, the entire Paji family would be unable to deal with the 3 Dharma protectors from Sangha Temple. Sangha Temple. The heads of the 4 great families gathered in the Buddha Hall, sitting at a huge table with only the 4 heads sitting at the 4 corners. Even their closest guards were not allowed to enter. This was the highest level meeting in the southwest region. The atmosphere at today's meeting was somewhat solemn. As the chief monk of Sangha Temple, Yashilangtai Deji's face was stern, and his eyes were filled with unconcealed anger. His gaze lingered on Pa Jigsan, who was sitting nearby. What happened yesterday could not be hidden from the heads of the 4 great families of the southwest region. La Min Oju and Xiaja Gyatso did not say a word. This matter had nothing to do with them, so they decided to wait and see how Ayashi Langtai Deji and Pa Jigsan would deal with it. Deji spoke first. Yesterday, the Sangha Temple's Dharma protectors were attacked while patrolling the border. The entire team was wiped out. How dare they attack the protectors of Tantra in the snowy plateau? These people must have been seduced by demons, and their crime is unforgivable. At this point, Deji slowly turned his gaze to Pajigsan. Head of the Paji family, according to the information I have received, those people went to your Paji family afterwards. Is this true? The eyes of the three family heads fell on Pajigsan. It was common knowledge that those monk soldiers were nominally members of Sangha Temple, but they followed the orders of the Yashi Langtai family. However, Deji was attacking Pajigsan in the name of the chief monk of Sangha Temple, so it was up to Pajigsan to respond. Pajigsan frowned. Oh? Is that so? How come I don't know anything about this? La Menoju turned up the corners of her mouth. At a time like this, you still pretend to be confused. Your Excellency is truly a master of pretending to be confused. Deji's face turned a little cold. So, those people have nothing to do with the Paji family head? Pajigsan smiled and put his hands together in prayer. Amitabha, there are so many people in the Paji family, I can't possibly know everyone. We had a meeting all day yesterday, and I went back to sleep. I just woke up and you called me over. He frowned. Maybe they were just passing by. Deji snorted coldly. Gasang, don't play dumb. We have sufficient evidence in our hands, and the person is in your Paji family. Desecrating Buddhism and killing a Tantra protector, do you know how grave this crime is? What, are you going to protect those demons? Pajigsan shook his head. This is the first time I've heard about this. We need to investigate thoroughly. How about this, I'll look into it carefully after I return. His expression suddenly became serious. If I really find out who did this, our Paji family will never forgive them. Deji sneered inwardly. He knew that Pajigsan would not hand over the person so easily. But fortunately, he had already made arrangements in advance. The people he sent out were all the best fighters in Sangha Temple. If they went to the Paji family in the name of Tantra to demand the person, and if they dared not hand him over, the monk soldiers waiting at the border of the Paji family would directly attack the Paji family. Don't be fooled by the large number of people in the Paji family. When faced with the monk soldiers of Sangha Temple, they would ultimately be intimidated. Such was the influence of Tantra. After all, no one wants to go to the 18 levels of hell after death. Deji snorted coldly. Even if this matter is investigated, your Paji family will not be able to escape responsibility. Delaying is useless, the truth will always come out. Unless those demons can hide in your Paji family forever. Pajigsan laughed. Chief monk, why do you say that? In my opinion, it's all a misunderstanding. Deji said angrily, head of the Paji family. Killing the guardian deity of Sangha Temple, how can that be a misunderstanding? Do you dare say that to the Buddha? Pajigsan's eyes hesitated a little. They grew up in the snowy plateau and had a devout belief in tantric faith. Perhaps they did not follow all the precepts of Buddhism, but they still had a deep reverence for the gods and Buddhas. Chief monk, why are you being like this? I just think that there must be something fishy going on, and we need to take time to investigate. Besides, the Dharma assembly is about to begin, and we have been preparing for it for a long time. Don't let some trivial matters affect the assembly. Deji and Pajigsan argued fiercely. In fact, both of them knew the truth. The monk soldiers led by Roland had already wiped out countless mercenaries who had entered the snowy region. If those people were strong enough, they would have killed Roland and the others long ago. Deji was just using this as an excuse to cause trouble. The other two family heads stood by and watched the show, but deep down, they were also very happy that Roland and his men had been killed. After all, those were the Yashi Langtai family's lackeys, and many of the people invited by the other two great families had also been targeted by them. Deji sat on a chair, fingering his prayer beads, and sighed lightly. Alas! Our four Tusi families are like branches of the same tree. When one prospers, all prosper. When one suffers, all suffer. Now that the Dharma assembly is about to begin, we must not cause conflict at this time. Now, the undertaker has the protection of the gods and Buddhas and possesses extraordinary powers to protect our entire snowy region. We should center ourselves around the undertaker and serve him devoutly. But at present, Sangha Temple is not powerful enough and has even lost its guardian deity to the demons. How can this boost the confidence of the followers of the Tantric faith? As Deji spoke, he looked at the 3 family heads. Therefore, I propose that our 4 families contribute some of our power to the Undertaker to strengthen the prestige of Sangha Temple, which will also serve to deter the petty thieves from other regions. He raised his hand and said, my Yashilangtai family will be the first to make a statement. I can contribute 1,000 warriors and 5,000 serfs. This includes all their weapons and supplies. At this point, Paji-san and the other 2 family heads finally understood Deji's intention. He wanted to use the destruction of Roland's team as an excuse to demand that the 3 major families hand over their troops and serfs. Nowadays, population and military force represented power. This was tantamount to handing over their power. The 3 family heads' expressions turned ugly. The Yashilangtai family had done this many times in the past, and the power of the 3 families had been slowly eroded. Now, their territory, military force, and population were less than half of what they had been at the beginning of the apocalypse. Yashilangtai Deji spoke nicely and took the lead in donating, but he himself was the chief monk of Sangha Temple. No matter how much he donated, it would just go from his left pocket to his right pocket and still be at his disposal. Pajigsan glanced at Deji with a cold look on his face. Xiaja Gyatso and La Min Oju were also looking at him. The Paji family was very powerful, second only to the Yashilangtai family. If the Undertaker had not come from the Yashilangtai family, the Paji family would now be the strongest force in the Snowy Plateau. In comparison, the Xiaja family and the La Min family were relatively weak. Both of them were waiting for Pajigsan to make a move. After Deji finished speaking, he looked at the 3 people sitting there. Everyone, Sangha Temple needs your help. This is not an offering to anyone, but to the gods and Buddhas. Who is in favor, and who is in opposition? The 3 people below kept their eyes down and their mouths shut, none of them speaking first. Deji smiled slightly and looked at Pajigsan. Paji family head, I have already stated my position. I am willing to contribute men and supplies. What do you think? Pajigsan was called out, so he had no choice but to speak up. He smiled, looked at Deji, and said humbly, the Paji family's foundation has been passed down from generation to generation. As a descendant, I dare not give it away lightly. But since the chief monk has spoken, we are willing to contribute more meat for the sacrifice. They could give some supplies, but they absolutely could not give up their people. Deji's expression turned cold. He had not expected Pajigsan's attitude. Over the past 2 years, Pajigsan had become increasingly weak when facing him. This made Deji believe that the entire Snowy Plateau was already under his control. Although the Undertaker did not like conquest, he was, after all, a member of the Yashilangtai family. Even if he was just waving a big flag, it was enough to make the other 3 families wary. But today, he realized that Pajigsan had changed. Deji didn't understand where Pajigsan got the confidence to dare to refuse his request. His request wasn't too high. 1,000 warriors and 5,000 serfs would be painful for the 3 families, but not enough to cause them serious damage. In the past, he had used this method to slowly chip away at the power of the 3 families. But today, what was wrong with Pajigsan? Who had suddenly given him the courage to oppose him? Deji frowned, his eyes cold and frightening. La Min Oju and Xiaja Gyatso also did not expect Pajigsan to suddenly be so tough. Deji suddenly laughed. Paji family head, everything I've mentioned are offerings to the Buddha. You don't want Sangha Temple to lose face during the Dharma assembly, do you? Pajigsan smiled faintly. The gods and Buddhas are merciful and won't mind such trivial matters. Everyone in the Paji family is devoutly devoted to Buddhism, and the Buddha will understand. Amitabha. Deji suddenly chanted the Buddha's name loudly. He stared coldly at Pajigsan. Pajigsan, do you think you can represent the will of the Buddha, and not me? With Jeangi backing him up, Pajigsan now felt confident. He leaned back in his chair and laughed coldly. Chief monk, you've only been in this position for 2 years. How can you claim to speak for the Buddha so quickly? Deji was so angry at Pajigsan that he gritted his teeth. Fine, fine, it seems that your Paji family really wants to go against Sangha Temple. Pajigsan stood up and said, our Paji family is devout followers of Buddha, but we will not accept others using Buddha's name to fulfill their own desires. After saying that, Pajigsan left his seat and strode out of the Buddha hall. The three of them were stunned by this scene. Did the Pajigsan they knew really have such courage? Seeing this, La Menoju's eyes flashed with a strange light, as if she had guessed something. If it weren't for the support of a powerful force, how could Pajigsan have such confidence? Deji angrily reached out and slammed his hand on the table. Pajigsan was challenging his authority to his face. If he didn't resolve this issue properly, his prestige in the snowy region would be greatly diminished. Deji suddenly turned his head to look at La Menoju and Xiaja Gyatso, then narrowed his eyes coldly. La Men, head of the La Men family, Xiaja, head of the Xiaja family, what is your attitude? Deji's anger was no longer concealed. The two looked at each other, feeling quite helpless. Their families were far less powerful than the Paji family. Even if the Yashi Langtai family didn't send out the Undertaker, it wouldn't be too difficult to destroy their families. What's more, they had the Undertaker behind them. With no other choice, Xiaja Gyatso took a deep breath and said, within 3 days, we will send these people and supplies to Sangha Temple. Deji's expression softened slightly, and he immediately looked at La Menoju, the only woman among the heads of the Western families. La Men, what about you? La Menoju's face was pale, not out of fear, but out of anger. However, she couldn't let it show in front of Deji. Gritting her teeth, she said coldly, the La Men family will also offer these things within 3 days. A smile finally appeared on Deji's lips. You are all smart people. Doing as I say is the right choice. Just wait and see. Those who go against the will of the gods and Buddhas will definitely pay the price. He stood with his hands behind his back, looking confident. La Menoju and Xiaja Gyatso exchanged glances, knowing that Deji was definitely going to take action against the Paji family. Although they were reluctant to give up their resources, they were also looking forward to seeing the two powerful families of Yashi Langtai and Paji fight each other. They secretly wondered what Deji would do and whether Pajigsan would dare to confront Deji head-on. The Paji family's castle. The 3 Dharma protectors of Sangha Temple entered unopposed and headed straight for the Paji family's courtyard. However, it was impossible for just the 3 of them to get past the Paji family's heavily armed guards. Even the powerful Delta-level mutants couldn't withstand the firepower of tens of thousands of soldiers. However, they came from Sangha Temple, a sacred place revered by all followers of Tantra. When the soldiers learned of their identities and heard that the person who attacked the Dharma protectors was in Paji's family, they immediately lost the courage to resist. Even though some pointed their guns at the 3, they only dared to make a show of it, and few dared to actually fire. When the chief steward Lubu received this news, his face was filled with panic. It's a diversionary tactic. He rushed to Jeangi's residence and asked Jeangi and the others to temporarily avoid the danger. Everyone, please follow me and hide in the cellar. Paji's house is so big, they won't be able to find you and will leave on their own. Lubu said to Jeangi. Upon hearing this, Jeangi smiled and raised his eyebrows. Looking for me? Interesting. But there's nothing to hide, right? But. Lubu wanted to say more, but Jeangi patted him on the shoulder. Since they came looking for someone, do you think we can just hide and get away? Among the mutants, some were skilled at searching, while others could control minds and make people speak the truth. There were definitely people like that among their opponents. If they didn't have accurate information, how could they come here so brazenly? Jeangi didn't look for trouble, but he wasn't afraid of it either. He was a highly paid mercenary hired by the Paji family. He had received their benefits, so he had to do something for them, right? The 3 guardians of Sangha Temple, led by Muchuan, arrived outside the huge courtyard of the Paji family. They stood guard outside the main gate and demanded that the Paji family hand over the murderers who had killed Roland and the others. This put the Paji family's private army in a very difficult position. The private army, which possessed the strongest military force, would certainly not allow these people to enter the Paji family. However, these 3 guardians were all top fighters of Sangha Temple. With their abilities, they couldn't stop them. What's more, they also had reservations and didn't dare to really kill these people. Gentlemen, please hand over the murderers and uphold the dignity of Tantra. Muchuan put his hands together and said to the private soldiers at the door with a pious look on his face. The private army commander Jeangi stood in front of the main door with a Vajra pestle in his hand, his face solemn. Master, our family head is not here. Please return. Muchuan sighed lightly. Exorcising demons and protecting the Tao is the duty of us Tantra practitioners. Have you even forgotten this? The old monk behind him said indifferently, do you also want to become accomplices of demons? Janda's face suddenly turned ugly. Once he was labeled with this name, it would be difficult for him to survive in the snowy region. It must be understood that the Paji family was able to maintain its current rule by relying on Tantra to maintain its authority among the common people. Once they were labeled as collaborators with demons, there would be big problems within the family. Janga clenched the Vajra pestle in his hand, not knowing how to deal with this trouble. If he really had to fight, he would not be able to defeat the 3 Dharma protectors in front of him. He knew Muchuan's strength was far above his. The key point was that they had a legitimate reason for coming, so Janga had no way to take action. Just at that moment, a cold voice came from inside the door. I heard someone was looking for me. As soon as he finished speaking, a stern-looking man walked out from inside the door. He was dressed in black combat uniform and looked at the 3 monks in robes in front of him with interest. Muchuan and the other 2 fixed their gaze on Jeangi. They recognized him at once as the mercenary leader who had killed Roland and the others. Muchuan's expression turned cold. Are you the demon who killed my Tantra guardian? The old monk Zangbu put his hands together and silently chanted the Buddha's name. Amitabha, the demonic energy on your body is too strong. We must exorcise the demon. Another monk, Ashina, spoke in a deep voice and said coldly to Jeangi, come with us. You are possessed by a demon. Only we can help you complete the exorcism ritual, and only then will you be able to restore your good heart. A cold smile appeared on Jeangi's lips. They came right out and labeled him a devil. What arrogance! But in Tantra, this method was indeed very effective. After the 3 monks said this, people around them actually looked at Jeangi with strange eyes. Tantra's influence was so great that even the Paji family's private soldiers believed the Sangha temple monks' words. The chief steward Lubu stood to one side, looking worriedly at Jeangi. But Jeangi had told him when he arrived not to worry, that he could handle everything himself. Jeangi walked forward step by step, past Janda, and said indifferently, what devil? Are you talking about the roadblock devil I killed? Don't worry, I've already taken care of those guys for you. From now on, the road from the snowy plateau to the outside world will be unobstructed. Ashina shouted, Demon! You're talking nonsense. The ones you killed were the protective deities of our Tantra sect. They were devout people who protected the peace of the snowy plateau, but you killed them. Since you've admitted it yourself, there's nothing more to say. Come with us immediately and undergo an exorcism ceremony. That's your only way back. The old monk chanted the name of Buddha, but Jeangi felt 3 forces secretly locking onto him. It seemed that as soon as he made a move to resist, the 3 of them would mercilessly strike him down and kill him. Jeangi raised the corners of his mouth slightly. Oh? An exorcism ceremony? You're not planning to take the law into your own hands, are you? Muchuan rebuked, nonsense. Our Buddhist sect is devoted to goodness, and even someone like you, a villain, is not without compassion in our hearts. As long as you accept the exorcism ceremony and put down your sword to become a disciple of Buddha, we will give you a chance to repent. Jeangi sneered inwardly. These sect members like to talk big. Everyone knew they had bad intentions, and they knew that Jeangi knew they had bad intentions, but they still had to cover it up with a noble pretext. Jeangi nodded, all right, I'll go with you.